Hello Hambini fans and welcome to another episode of Hambini Reams. Now, there's nothing I like more than a little bit of corporate shenanigans. In today's episode, Wahoo is suing Zwift and it's by Hambini age 5. Let us do that pen 15 check. 15 check. Right, bit of a trailer for what's coming up. Shortly we will be having a video which is Absolute Black versus Hambini versus PT versus Wayno's Photos versus GC Performance. You can guess who the loser in there is going to be, and also look me up on Patreon. Right, what is going on? Well, Wahoo is suing Zwift and Jet Black for patent infringement. And that revolves around these two things. This is the original Volt 2 smart trainer by Jet Black, and it has been on the market since I think around 2019, 2020. It is $500 and you get quite a lot of gear for your cash, and it's been reviewed by various sorts of people like Shane Miller and I think some of the others, and all sorts. There we go, DC Rainmakers, Stay Fast Cycling, all of that lot. They basically said it was very good and it was fairly cheap. Now Zwift came in with this thing. So the Zwift Hub looks like a rebranded version of the Jet Black Volt, and that's coming in at 449 quid, and you get basically everything to get loaded onto Zwift. Now, Wahoo are saying that it's like a blatant copy of the one of their trainers. I think it's the Kicker Core, but I think in reality they're kidding nobody, because the Jet Black Volt's been around there for the best part of 3 years and they didn't say a word. Now, as soon as Zwift got into the market, now they are suing the pair of them. This slide shows you basically what markets they're in, and Zwift isn't really competitive. Now I've put Wahoo and Garmin in here, and then the offerings from the two companies. So you've got pedals, Garmin has the pedals, the turbo trainers, Garmin has Tax, the cycling computers, the Wahoo Element Roam and the Garmin Edge series, and then you've got the watches like the Garmin Phoenix, and I've forgotten what the Wahoo one is called. In my eyes, those two are direct competitors. There are some areas where Garmin has much more diversity. So in terms of like car sat-nav units, a lot of them still use Garmin software. Aerospace applications, some navigation systems there are still Garmin. If you go over to the right, Zwift basically has their software and nothing else. You put all that into a little tick box, and you know all the ticks are here. So Garmin and Wahoo, you can see the crossover is quite clear there. Subscription services, and this is a bit of an area where you've got Garmin doesn't really have an offering, whereas Wahoo, by buying up the Sufferfest and a few others, has now got an offering. Zwift has a very strong offering in the subscription services. So for, I think it's 13 or 14 quid a month, you can go onto Zwift, and they have quite a lot of market share in terms of the cycling or the smart training cycling market. Wahoo doesn't have anywhere near that. This Zwift Hub suddenly gets them into the market here, and it's very, very cheap. It's only 449 quid. Versus I think the nearest Wahoo offering is like 700 or 800. As soon as they got into that, that's when the lawsuit came in. Now, Wahoo did take Jet Black and Zwift to court. Jet Black and Wahoo have settled. It's not quite clear what the settlement was, but it's ended up being that Jet Black won't sell the Volt in Europe and the USA. So I think in that regard, Wahoo will claim they've won, but have they really won? I would argue they haven't. This is some media coverage around Wahoo's credit rating and credit in general, business potential in it's fairly scathing. One statistic that is terrible really is the EBITDA to debt, or debt to EBITDA ratio. Now EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, I think it's amortization, but it's effectively a ratio or an indicator of how good and profitable and growable the business is. I mean, they have a debt to EBITDA ratio of 18x plus, so they're and a cash flow deficit in the region of $50 million. That is pretty severe. They are not in a good shape at all, and it looks like their two biggest investors, which is Roan Capital and Roan Group, and I think is it Chip, who own the business. Moody's are saying, you know, they may need to put some money into there. So the crux of this now, in terms of commercials and also the consumer, what is likely to happen? Well, I think the ultimate thing is, I think Wahoo and Zwift will settle. I'm not quite sure in whose favour. Zwift, I mean, the thing with this is that Wahoo, if you forget their subscription service, because it's not like something you aspire to, whereas Zwift is something you aspire to. It's certainly not, you know, I don't aspire to get a Wahoo subscription, but you do subscribe. You do want a Zwift subscription so you can go ride with your friends, if you have any. But in terms of, you know, hardware, once you've got the hardware, you've then got to warranty it. So Zwift don't have any of that to worry about yet. They can just send an over-the-air update and their software gets updated, whereas Wahoo, they're reliant on, once you've bought the turbo trainer, it wearing out or some newfangled feature comes out which compels you to spend another $500, $700, $800 and buy a new one. Zwift doesn't have that, so they can do that. They don't have the warranty claims. Their kind of overheads in terms of the distribution structure and all that part is not as heavily involved. You don't need that distributorship. Obviously they're going to sell these Zwift hubs, but it's not quite the same. So that bit of their business is, I would say, fairly strong. Wahoo isn't. Moody's obviously doesn't think it is, and they probably fear Zwift is going to have a software hardware lockout. So you could end up with the Zwift hub only working with Zwift software. Now, they haven't indicated that's going to happen at the moment, but it is a possibility. And, you know, Wahoo, who are they kidding? This is nothing to do with them copying the turbo trainer. It's because A, it's cheap, and B, they see some commercial loss in the tactics that Zwift are going to have. Now, where this goes further is, if you look at Moody's ratings and stuff like that, I think the chances are that Wahoo will probably end up in some sort of settlement, and I think because of their financial predicament, I think Zwift will be able to defend that. And in this process of doing that, because they're going to get annoyed by it all, Zwift will probably go and countersue for whatever infringement the Sufferfest or RGT has. I don't know what they are, but you know, it's likely that that is going to happen. What's going to happen for the consumer? I guess at the end of the day, no one really knows. Now, in the Northern Hemisphere, we're coming out of turbo trainer season and then going into back into, you know, out on the road. But we will see. Right, that brings us to the end of this video. If you did enjoy it, remember to smash that like button. If you didn't, remember to go and screw yourself. And as always, keep banging your hairdresser.